They looked at her like she didn't belong. Not because she raised her voice or acted entitled, but because of what she wore, what she carried, and, perhaps most of all, the color of her skin. Monica Harris, dressed in a plain blue blouse, with a faded canvas bag over her shoulder and a quiet confidence that had seen years of struggle, stood at the threshold of the Oakage Grand Hotel lobby. The marble floors gleamed, the chandelier overhead caught light like a crown, but the crown wasn't hers tonight. At least not yet. She stepped inside, her breath shallow against the cold luxury that she herself had curated 6 years ago. The same hallway she had once walked with her daughter Isla, who had skipped ahead and declared, "Mommy, this place smells like dreams," now echoed back silence. No welcome. No recognition. No red carpet. And Monica didn't expect one. She walked slowly toward the reception desk where a young blonde woman with shell-pink nails tapped a rhythm on the counter, half distracted, eyes barely lifting. The name tag read, Kayla Matthews, night shift receptionist. Monica smiled gently, polite but poised. "Hello, I'd like to check in. My name is Monica Harris." Kayla's fingers hovered above the keyboard. She didn't look up immediately. When she did, her expression was more curious than courteous. She searched the system. Then stopped. Her brows pinched slightly. "I don't see a reservation under that name." "That's all right," Monica replied calmly. "There should be an executive suite available. There's always one held aside for the property owner. And I am that person." For a moment, Kayla just stared. Then blinked. "You're the owner?" The pause between her words stretched longer than the distance between them. "Yes." Monica didn't flinch. Her voice was even, practiced from decades of having to convince others that her presence didn't need validation. Kayla's lips tightened. She didn't check again. "I'm sorry, but the hotel is fully booked tonight. We only accept guests with confirmed reservations." No apology. No confirmation call. No attempt to verify. Just rejection, polished and polite. Monica didn't argue. She didn't lean in or raise her voice. She simply turned and looked at the brass plaque mounted behind the desk. Oakage Grand, A. Harris Property. Her name, carved in metal, glinted beneath the chandelier's light. It wasn't an accessory. It was legacy. And yet, the woman who built it all was being told, "You don't belong here." "I understand," Monica said, though her voice cooled by a degree. "May I speak to the night manager?" "I'll call him," Kayla replied, reaching for the desk phone with mechanical courtesy. The lobby, once filled with the low murmur of travelers and the clicking of luggage wheels, began to fall eerily quiet. A businessman typing nearby stopped mid-keystroke. A couple lounging by the fireplace glanced over. Even the doorman stiffened, unsure if something was about to escalate. Moments later, a thin man emerged from the back office. His tie was loose, clipboard tucked under one arm. Neil Dawson, assistant night manager, read the badge. "Good evening. Is there a problem?" he asked, trying to inject lightness into a space that now felt like glass under pressure. Kayla spoke before Monica could answer. "She says she's the owner." Neil's eyes scanned Monica quickly, stopping at her shoes, flats that had crossed more cities than he probably ever would, and then flicked to her bag. No designer logos. No entourage. No visible authority. "Miss Harris?" Neil asked, eyes narrowing. "Yes," Monica said. For the third time. "I'm here for a brief overnight stay before tomorrow's board meeting. There should be a reserved suite. We'll just need to verify that with central operations," Neil said, clearing his throat. "Please wait here." Monica didn't move. She didn't argue. She didn't pull out her phone or name-drop anyone. She simply stood there, tall, still, unshaken. Like a monument they were trying to walk past without acknowledging. And that's when the atmosphere changed. Security guards, subtle but present, emerged at either side of the lobby. One near the elevator. Another near the lounge bar. They weren't threatening, not outwardly, but Monica knew exactly what their presence meant. A black woman. No reservation. Claiming ownership. Threat detected. Still, Monica's breath didn't hitch. She stood straighter, eyes calm, posture dignified. She wasn't here to prove she belonged. She knew she did. What she was witnessing wasn't new. But it was disappointing, because she'd thought she'd built a place where this no longer happened. And yet here she was again. "Miss Harris," Neil returned, clipboard trembling slightly in his hands. "We're contacting the regional office now. It shouldn't take long." "Take your time," Monica said simply. "I'll wait." But her wait wasn't passive. It was powerful. It made the lobby feel colder, like her stillness had frozen the entire space in place. The silence became deafening. Every guest felt it. Every staff member sensed it. Kayla shifted behind the counter, fingers suddenly unsure. Her eyes darted to the nameplate again. Then down to her phone. She typed something. Monica Harris. Harris and Company. Geo. Within seconds, Google answered what her eyes refused to see. A photo appeared, Monica in a tailored charcoal suit, standing beside Brent Caldwell and Carlos Mejia at the ribbon-cutting ceremony of the Oakage Grand, this very hotel, under this very chandelier. Her face went pale. But Monica didn't even look her way. She simply stood by the marble column, the weight of her silence pressing down harder than any shouted threat. She wasn't here to embarrass anyone. But she also wasn't here to be erased. From the corner of her eye, she saw the guards hesitate. The bellhop fidget. Even the lights above flickered slightly, as if the building itself were ashamed of what it had allowed to happen. And then Monica pulled out her phone. One number. One call. 26 seconds. Lauren, she said. I'm at Oakage Grand Des Moines. Denied entry to my suite. Handle it now. She hung up. And just like that, the room changed again. Not because she demanded it, but because presence doesn't always need proof. Sometimes it just needs to be seen. The silence that followed Monica's 26-second call was unlike anything the Oakage Grand had ever known. No raised voices. No pounding fists. No dramatic exits. Just the cold, calm stillness of a woman who had no more energy to explain herself, because her very being, her existence in that space, was the explanation. Across the lobby, subtle movements began to stir. Guests started murmuring behind their coffee cups. A businessman with AirPods paused his podcast. The doorman adjusted his stance. Even the concierge by the bell desk, who had been flipping through brochures absent-mindedly, sat up straighter. But Monica stood motionless. She didn't look around to see who was watching. She already knew. Behind the counter, Kayla Matthews had stopped pretending to scroll through reservations. Her fingers were now trembling as she rapidly Googled Monica Harris CO Hotel, and began reading with a growing sense of dread. There it was, image after image. Monica in front of luxury properties. Monica shaking hands with state officials. Monica in trade journals, hailed as one of the top 10 black female CEOs in the American hospitality industry. And one image stood out. Monica, dressed in that same calm shade of blue at this hotel's opening ceremony, standing under the very chandelier now shining above her. Kayla's fingers stopped typing. Her breath caught. Her eyes darted to the column Monica was standing beside. Suddenly, everything in the room looked different, because she was different. Monica hadn't changed. But now Kayla saw her. And Monica still hadn't said a word. Neil Dawson, clipboard in hand, walked in again from the back hallway, this time slower, sweat beading on his forehead. He was flanked by two senior figures in suits, Brent Caldwell, the Midwest Regional VP, and Carlos Mejia, the chain's operations director. Their faces were tense, their eyes scanning the room like men who just discovered a fire they were responsible for. Miss Harris, Brent said breathlessly as if trying to defuse a bomb with a handshake, please accept our sincerest apologies. Carlos jumped in, his words stumbling over themselves. Suite 1501 is ready. The staff is doing a final check. The driver's arranged for tomorrow. There's been a serious error. They didn't say discrimination. They didn't say judgment. They said error. Because corporate language always finds a safer word for shame. Monica turned slowly toward them, her expression unreadable. Her arms still hung loosely at her sides, canvas bag still resting on her shoulder. But her presence, it filled the room like thunder waiting to break. You've both met me before, Monica said to them, her voice soft but undeniable. Brent swallowed hard. Yes. I was at the grand opening. And Carlos, she added, you received your first management scholarship through my outreach program. Carlos winced. Yes, ma'am. Yes. The silence that followed wasn't accusatory, it was clarifying. They knew who she was. And that made their panic worse. Because their staff hadn't failed a stranger, they had failed her. Brent nodded toward Kayla. She didn't know. I didn't ask her to know me, Monica interrupted. I asked for a room. In a hotel with my name on the plaque. I didn't ask for recognition. I asked for access. Her words settled over the room like falling bricks. Carlos shifted nervously. We've initiated immediate policy reviews. Retraining. HR evaluations. Monica raised one hand, not abruptly, not angrily, just enough. Later, she said. We'll talk later. Right now, I just want my room key. Brent fumbled with the folder, flipping to a fresh sheet. Yes, of course. Room 1501. Espresso machine is set. Fruit tray arrives at 6:45. Key cards are printing now. We'll issue an incident report immediately. Monica tilted her head. And the staff involved? Carlos swallowed. They've been asked to remain available for conversation and follow-up. We've also paused new check-ins temporarily while we correct. She will stay, Monica said, cutting to the point, her eyes on Kayla, who hadn't looked up once since the executives entered. I'm sorry? Brent asked. She will stay, Monica repeated. But she won't return to the desk until she's completed one-on-one retraining. With HR. With me. After I've rested. Carlos nodded quickly. Yes, of course. And then Monica did something no one expected. She turned fully toward Kayla and said, Look at me. Kayla lifted her chin, trembling, her eyes wet. The woman she had dismissed only an hour ago now stood before her like a living correction to everything she thought she understood about success, identity, and power. I will speak to you tomorrow, Monica said. Not to punish, but to teach. Because the problem isn't that you made a mistake. The problem is that you didn't know it was a mistake until someone made a phone call. Kayla bit her lip, nodded, whispered, Yes, ma'am. Monica took her key card from Brent and walked slowly toward the elevator. No one followed her. No one dared. As the doors closed behind her, the tension in the lobby deflated like a room exhaling. But Monica didn't feel triumphant. She felt tired. The elevator chimed at the 15th floor. She stepped into the suite she had personally designed. The walnut desk by the window, the velvet chair, the lemon-scented diffuser. Everything just as she had envisioned. Yet somehow it felt distant now. Foreign. The space she had built had failed to welcome her. And yet she was still here. Not for luxury, but for legacy. She walked slowly toward the window, her reflection caught in the glass. A black woman with no designer label, no loud demands, no camera crew. Just the quiet authority of someone who had earned everything and still had to ask for what was already hers. Suite 1501 was quiet, too quiet. The lemon scent, warm and subtle, floated through the room exactly as she designed it years ago. Monica had fought hard with suppliers for that fragrance. It wasn't listed in any brand catalog. It came from a small shop run by a middle-aged couple in Chicago who crafted essential oils by hand. She'd smelled it once during a business lunch and said, That's what calm should feel like. Now it lingered in her own hotel, and yet tonight, it didn't bring her peace. She walked past the espresso tray on the walnut desk, everything in precise order, porcelain cup, 3 pods, brown sugar packet with a silver spoon. It was all perfect, all routine. But nothing about tonight had been routine. Monica paused at the gray velvet sofa. The one she chose on a freezing morning in January while her daughter, Isla, had a fever. Monica had sketched the floor plan for this suite on a napkin at the ER while gently pressing a cold compress against her daughter's brow. She never sent that sketch to the architect. She kept it, because it was proof. Proof that even at her most exhausted, she was still building something. She sat down, her hand brushing the armrest. The fabric was soft, cool, elegant. But her body didn't sink into it. It tensed. Her mind raced. They hadn't said the word, but they'd shown it. Doubt. That's what had hurt most tonight. Not the refusal. Not the security guards. Not even the hushed whispers from guests in golf shirts near the lobby fireplace. It was that tiny, sharp edge of hesitation. That pause when someone asks, Are you sure? As if you're impersonating your own worth. And Monica wasn't new to that look. She'd seen it at PDA meetings, real estate closings, executive summits, even at church bake sales. You're the owner? You're the speaker? You're the one we're meeting with? You. Always you, never just yes. Her eyes wandered to the table near the window where a small, pre-printed card waited. It read, Thank you for staying at Oakage Grand. We cherish your presence. No name. No personal touch. Just a mass-produced line stamped across cardstock that meant nothing and said everything. Monica picked it up, studied it for a long second, then placed it face down. She walked over to the mirror beside the minibar. Looked at herself. Her hair tied up in a simple bun. No makeup. Lightly pressed blouse. The sleeves slightly rolled to the elbow. She didn't look like the women in executive glossies or Forbes lists. But this face, the tired, watchful, composed one staring back, was the face of every all-nighter, every missed birthday, every sacrifice no one clapped for. She didn't build this hotel for appearances. She built it because she was tired of being unseen. And yet today she had been invisible. Again. She didn't cry. She didn't pace. She sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the folded cream sheets, the amber-orange glow from the bedside lamp warming her skin like a silent companion. And she remembered that first job. Receptionist. Night shift. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. with a young Isla curled up under her desk on a small blanket. Monica had whispered lullabies between check-ins. Learned accounting terms from overhearing calls. Smiled through swollen ankles. Got called sweetie and girl by guests who didn't bother with her name. And after her shift, she went to class. Community college. Intro to business. Learned to read contracts. Memorized financing structures on the bus while leaning against cold windows. All for a better future. For Isla. For herself. Now she was a CO, multi-property, multi-million, multi-state. And she still had to stand in a lobby and prove she deserved to sleep in her own room. Her phone vibrated. A message from Lauren James, her longtime ally and regional operations director. We've addressed the situation at corporate. An internal memo is going out first thing. You handled it exactly as I knew you would. Strong. Quiet. Powerful. But I'm sorry it had to happen. Monica didn't reply. Not yet. She opened her notes app instead. Typed slowly. You don't need to shout to be heard. Walk as though that door has always belonged to you. She paused, reread it, and then locked the screen. Not for posting. Not for a statement. Just for herself. A soft knock interrupted her silence. A staff member, eyes wide with nerves, handed her the evening turned-down service tray. She didn't speak. Monica nodded gently, not coldly but firmly. When the door clicked shut again, Monica felt something shift in her. Not anger. Not pride. Resolve. She picked up her phone and texted Brent Caldwell directly. Meeting. 8 a.m. HR, training and guest services. Bring Linda Sherman. A few seconds passed. Confirmed. Monica exhaled. She wasn't going to let this moment slide into corporate paperwork and polite apologies. She wasn't here to punish. She was here to repair something deeper than a missed reservation. She stood up, walked toward the bed, and laid down fully clothed, eyes fixed on the ceiling she once approved in a 3D render on a 10-year-old laptop. All she ever wanted was to build something her daughter could be proud of. A space where women like her could enter without question. And tonight, even after everything, she still believed it was possible. Morning light poured in through the sheer curtains of Suite 1501, painting soft gold across the cream-colored carpet. Monica Harris stood by the window, fully dressed, her posture composed, her mind already 10 steps into the day. She hadn't slept much. She rarely did before board meetings. But this morning's gathering wasn't about numbers or projections. It was about values. About consequences. About the silent cracks that formed when a system forgot its heart. She picked up her briefcase and glanced once more at the room. Every detail still spoke of her, from the color palette to the art on the wall, but last night had changed something. The silence she carried wasn't grief. It was purpose. Downstairs, the executive meeting room had been hastily prepped. Brent Caldwell and Carlos Mejia were already there, seated stiffly. Linda Sherman, head of HR, stood by the whiteboard, marker in hand, posture tense. When Monica entered, the room stilled. She didn't sit right away. She placed her briefcase on the table, removed a small folder, and addressed the room with no need for theatrics. We're not here to review a front desk protocol, she began. We're here to review who we've become. Carlos looked down. Brent leaned forward slightly as if ready to defend, but Monica raised her hand gently. Last night was not about a missed reservation. It was about perception. Reflex. The ease with which someone like me can still be dismissed in a place that wouldn't exist without me. Linda cleared her throat, stepping in. We've already started drafting a staff memo and incident report. Monica cut in, her voice firm. A memo won't fix this. You know what will? Rewriting the way we train. She turned to the screen, clicked a remote, and brought up the current employee onboarding outline. We train our staff to be courteous, efficient, responsive. But we don't train them to recognize bias. We don't ask them the hard questions. Who do you expect to be powerful? Who looks like they don't belong? Linda nodded slowly, now fully attentive. I'm revising the program, Monica said. Every employee, from valet to senior manager, will complete a new segment focused on empathy. Real stories. Real failures. Real reflection. Brent leaned forward. With respect, Monica, if word of this gets out, it could damage the brand. The brand is already damaged, Monica said sharply, though her tone remained composed. The question is whether we're brave enough to heal it. Carlos interjected more cautiously. And, what about Kayla? Monica's gaze shifted, unflinching. She stays. But she doesn't return to the front desk until she's completed personal training with me. Linda's eyes widened. You mean, a one-on-one? Yes, Monica said. I'm going to teach her what no manual can. Brent blinked. That's unprecedented. Good, Monica replied. Because the future should never look like the past. The room fell quiet. There was no need for more. Later that morning, Kayla Matthews sat in the smallest conference room on the second floor, fidgeting with the sleeve of her blazer. Her hair, once perfectly styled, now hung slightly limp, as if it too had lost some of its certainty. The door opened. Monica stepped in. No security. No assistant. Just her and the receptionist who had made the wrong assumption, and now had to live with it. Kayla stood immediately. Miss Harris. Monica held up a hand. Sit. She did. Monica took the seat across from her, set down a slim file and for a moment just looked at Kayla, not with disdain but with depth. Did I raise my voice last night? She asked calmly. Kayla shook her head. No, ma'am. Did I threaten you? Call the media? Record a video? No. Then why did you look at me and decide I couldn't be the owner? The question wasn't loud, but it landed like thunder. Kayla blinked rapidly. I didn't think. That's the problem, Monica said softly. You didn't think. You reacted. And that reaction comes from somewhere. She leaned back slightly, letting the silence do some of the talking. Kayla's voice cracked. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't, Monica said. But meaning well doesn't undo the moment. And you're not alone. The system that trained you failed you. Kayla looked up, surprised. So now, Monica continued, I'm going to ask you to help fix it. Me? Yes. After your training you'll mentor new hires. Not because you're perfect, but because you now understand the cost of not thinking. Kayla's eyes welled up. Why give me that chance? Monica smiled faintly. Because I used to stand where you stand. I was once the girl behind the desk who got called sweetheart instead of my name. Who got mistaken for the maid. Who got ignored in rooms she designed. She placed a pen gently on the table between them. We don't rise to hold power. We rise to pass it on. Kayla nodded, tears spilling silently. The training wouldn't start with a slideshow. It would start with a story. Monica's story. And now Kayla's. Because change doesn't start in manuals. It starts in moments. By the time the midday sun poured through the wide lobby windows of the Oakage Grand, word had already spread, not through tabloids or press releases, but through quiet, anxious whispers in back offices and break rooms. Everyone on staff knew what had happened the night before. And they all knew Monica Harris had stayed. Not just in the suite. In the building. In the meetings. In the moment. Monica had always preferred to work in silence, but silence now had a new meaning. It wasn't just her leadership style. It was her weapon. And after that morning's one-on-one with Kayla Matthews, it was also her gift. Back in the executive operations suite on the second floor, Monica stood in front of a planning board covered in timelines, staffing grids, and guest service metrics. She pulled down the current employee development chart and began replacing it with a new one, handwritten, personal. At the top of the paper in bold letters she wrote, "Empathy is not an asset. It is a hiring criterion." Carlos Mejia entered the room quietly, carrying a tablet but saying nothing. He waited as Monica adjusted the corners of her handwritten note and tacked it with purpose. When she turned, she didn't smile. But she didn't need to. "Carlos," she said evenly, "I want that sentence printed on the wall of every single training room in every single Harris property." He nodded. "Understood. No excuses about budget. No delays for legal clearance. No design committee meetings. Print it. Mount it." "Yes, ma'am." She glanced at his tablet. "And the candidate evaluation updates?" Carlos brought the tablet forward. "We're rewriting the interview rubric. Starting next quarter, every applicant will be required to read and respond to 3 real guest scenarios, specifically incidents involving race, class, or perceived identity." Monica nodded slowly. "No multiple choice." "Correct. We're requiring written reflections. And all staff who interact with guests will complete this same exercise, annually. Not once." Carlos hesitated for a moment. "Do you want this as a soft rollout?" Monica looked at him without blinking. "No. I want it like the fire code, non-negotiable." He nodded again, this time with a flicker of respect that ran deeper than compliance. "Consider it done." As he exited, Monica turned back to the board. She drew a simple square in the corner of the paper and wrote inside it, "The anonymous list." Because this wasn't just about policies anymore. It was about proving that the heart of a company beats loudest when no one's watching. That afternoon, Brent Caldwell sat across from Monica in the smaller strategy room adjacent to the lounge. He looked less polished than usual. The top button of his shirt was undone. His tie had been loosened, not in laziness but in defeat. "I'll be honest," he said. "I didn't see this coming." "You didn't want to see it," Monica replied. He didn't argue. She leaned forward. "We built this chain on the idea that hospitality means more than luxury. It means dignity. But we've allowed assumptions to speak louder than our values." Brent looked up. "We've made changes before, diversity pledges, outreach programs." "Which check boxes?" Monica interrupted. "But don't change minds." She pulled out a single-page memo and slid it toward him. "What's this?" he asked. "The realignment. We're scrapping the current reward system. No more quarterly bonuses based on guest spending or suite upgrades alone. From now on, staff evaluations will weigh guest experience feedback equally with sales." Brent raised an eyebrow. "That's going to upset a lot of people." "It should," she said. "Because the measure of our success isn't just revenue. It's whether a woman like me can walk into her own hotel and not be mistaken for the help." There was a long pause. Finally Brent said, "We'll need to retrain hundreds of people. Then let's get started." By sunset, the hotel lobby had returned to its usual rhythm. Guests checking in, doormen tipping hats, espresso machines humming softly behind the cafe counter. But something in the air felt different. Less performative. More alert. At the front desk, Kayla Matthews stood beside Linda Sherman, not behind the counter but seated at a consultation desk tucked to the side, beginning her retraining. This time she was listening. Not to a lecture, but to Monica's story. "And I remember being told to wait out back," Monica was saying, "because someone thought I was a caterer, not the keynote speaker." Kayla blinked. "That really happened?" Monica tilted her head. "You think what happened last night was the first time?" Pause. Then, "No. I guess not." "Guessing isn't enough," Monica said gently. "From now on I want you to know." She handed Kayla a small booklet, an internal publication Monica had written privately over the years titled Stories They Didn't See. It contained short personal essays, quotes, even guest letters she had received anonymously. It wasn't for HR filing. It was for reflection. Kayla held it like a sacred object. "You're not being punished," Monica said. "You're being challenged." And that, in Monica's world, meant more. Back in her suite later that night, Monica sat with the lights dimmed low. Her phone buzzed quietly with new messages, supportive texts, corporate replies, even media inquiries, but she ignored them. Her focus was on a small folded piece of paper resting on the table near the window. She hadn't unfolded it until now. In shaky handwriting it read, "Miss Harris, thank you for your understanding. I will be better. Kayla." Monica didn't smile. She just breathed. Not with relief, but with readiness. Because this wasn't the end of something. It was the start of a ripple, one that would travel through hallways, training rooms, hiring decisions, and silent judgments. And all of it had started not with a press release, but with presence. The next morning, Monica Harris sat alone in the executive coordination office on the second floor, the same place where months earlier she had approved the launch of Oakage Grand's digital concierge system. Now she sat before a much simpler interface, a printed copy of her own internal policy draft, hand-annotated with red ink. Across the top, she'd written a new internal directive. Respect isn't reactive. It must be proactive. The events of the past 48 hours had made it clear. No amount of luxury design or polished marble could shield a company from the rot of unconscious bias. A system didn't change because it apologized. It changed because it was rebuilt, intentionally from the inside out. Brent and Carlos arrived a few minutes later, looking more like students than executives. Brent carried a folder filled with board agendas. Carlos clutched a stack of HR reports. "We've pushed the shareholder call by 2 days," Brent said. "Wanted to get this sorted before it goes on record." Monica nodded. "Good. Because this is what's going on the record." She slid across a new proposal, 4 pages, typed, signed. Carlos scanned the first line aloud. "Implementation of blind evaluation audits across all properties." He looked up wide-eyed. "You want to go anonymous?" "I am going anonymous," Monica replied. "Effective next quarter, I will visit every major property without prior notice. No heads up. No red carpet. No hotel email signature. No preferred guest flag." Brent blinked. "You're not worried about the chaos that might create? I want the chaos, Monica said, calm but sharp. I want to see how the system behaves when it thinks it's unobserved. She leaned forward, resting both hands on the table. Because the truth is, the culture we've built looks great on paper. But it failed the moment someone like me, who built this place brick by brick, was told she didn't belong. Carlos looked stunned. And the staff? They'll adapt, Monica replied. And if they don't, they'll be replaced. No drama. No shouting. Just the sound of consequences. Meanwhile, in a small break room near the staff elevator, Kayla Matthews sat with her HR mentor and a laptop. She was watching a video, an old clip from a community college graduation over a decade ago. The screen showed Monica Harris in a borrowed dress, standing on stage beside a small girl in a pink hoodie. A voice off camera whispered, "That's her daughter. She's 8. Kayla didn't blink as Monica addressed the crowd in the video. I wasn't supposed to make it here. But I did. Not with money. With resilience. The screen faded to black. Kayla lowered the laptop lid slowly, her eyes damp but clear. Her HR mentor placed a hand on her arm. You understand what she's trying to give you, don't you? Kayla nodded. It's not punishment, she said softly. It's perspective. By noon, Monica had returned to her suite to pack. Her time in Des Moines was ending, but the ripple she started was only beginning. As she zipped her briefcase, her phone buzzed with a new message from Lauren James, her longtime operations ally. Regional teams have implemented the empathy modules. Field reports expected next week. Also, the Kansas City property heard what happened. Their night staff initiated a volunteer reading circle of guest letters last night, on their own. Monica exhaled, a rare, full breath. This was it. Not a revolution by announcement, but by osmosis. By people finally asking themselves, what have I been trained not to see? Downstairs, as Monica passed through the lobby one final time, something subtle happened. The same doorman who had stood silent during her mistreatment 2 nights earlier stepped forward. He didn't bow. He didn't apologize. He just said, "Safe travels, Miss Harris." And in his tone, low, respectful, sure, there was something she hadn't felt in this space for a long time. Acknowledgement. Not for her money. Not for her title. For her presence. She nodded back. We'll meet again. Then she stepped into the waiting black car. The driver closed the door with care, not ceremony. And as the vehicle pulled away from the curb, Monica didn't look back at the building she had built. She looked forward. Toward the next city. The next lobby. The next moment where someone else might need a door opened, and this time no one would question if they belonged. The drive to the airport was quiet, but Monica Harris wasn't lost in thought. She was tracking clarity. Outside the tinted window, Des Moines slid by in subdued colors. Low-slung rooftops, a child on a bicycle, a laundromat with the word "open" blinking in slow neon rhythm. But Monica wasn't seeing scenery. She was seeing contrast. Because the world outside hadn't changed, she had pulled back its curtain. In her hand, she still held the small folded note from Kayla. I will be better. It wasn't just an apology. It was a pivot. And Monica knew deep in her bones that pivots like that, quiet, personal, invisible to headlines, were the ones that truly moved a culture. At the airport, she moved swiftly through security. She wore no badge, no title, just the calm authority of someone who had nothing left to prove, but everything still worth protecting. Her gate wasn't open yet, so she found a seat by the window overlooking the tarmac. From her briefcase, she pulled out a slim leather notebook. Inside were pages of observations she hadn't shared with anyone. Not yet. She turned to a blank page and began to write. The world doesn't need louder voices. It needs clearer ones. And sometimes the clearest voice is the one that doesn't shout but walks in anyway. Back at the Oakage Grand, the ripple continued to widen. In the HR office, Linda Sherman had already posted Monica's handwritten line across the internal portal. Empathy is not an asset. It is a hiring criterion. It sparked quiet unrest in the system. A few managers grumbled about quotas. One longtime concierge raised an eyebrow and asked, "Is this about Monica's lobby thing?" But others, the ones who listened, began to think differently. They opened old guest complaint forms with fresh eyes. They rewrote interview questions. They paused before asking, "Do you belong here?" 3 days later in Kansas City, Monica walked into another of her hotels, this time as just another guest. No email had been sent. No executive prep. No suite cleared. She wore a navy sweatshirt, jeans, and a tote bag with a broken zipper. The receptionist, a young Indian man named Raj, greeted her without a flicker of suspicion or doubt. His eyes were kind. His tone was steady. "Welcome to Harrison Midtown. May I check you in?" She gave a fake name. He checked the list. "I'm sorry," he said gently, "I don't see a reservation under that name. But let me check for open suites. Would you prefer a city view?" Monica nodded. Just once. He didn't hesitate. Didn't question. Didn't scan her clothes or her skin for meaning. He looked at her like every human wants to be seen, as a person. Not a profile. Not a threat. Not an exception. And that's when Monica knew the seed had taken root. 2 weeks later, back at headquarters, a new video was added to the internal employee portal. It wasn't flashy. No music. No corporate branding. Just Monica Harris sitting in a simple chair facing the camera. She spoke clearly, softly. "I built this company not to erase bias, but to challenge it. And when I walk into a place that bears my name and still have to prove I belong, it tells me we still have work to do. But I believe in this work. I believe in the people who will one day walk into our hotels and not feel the need to lower their voice or raise their status to be seen. Until then, I'll keep walking through every door. And I'll keep holding it open behind me." She paused. Then added, "Not for applause. For impact." In Des Moines, Kayla Matthews still worked at Oak Ridge Grand, but she no longer stood behind the front desk. She now led new hire orientations. Her first presentation was different from what HR expected. She opened with a simple question. "Have you ever looked at someone and made up their story before they spoke?" No one answered. But everyone understood. And when she handed each trainee a copy of Monica's personal essay collection, Stories They Didn't See, no one rolled their eyes. They read. Because the lobby incident wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a curriculum. On her flight back to Chicago, Monica sat by the window, a cup of black coffee in hand. She didn't write. She didn't scroll. She just watched the clouds, each one parting silently as the plane ascended. In her mind, she returned to the image of Isla as a child, curled up under her reception desk, breathing softly between lobby calls. The same daughter who now attended Columbia University. The same daughter who had texted her last night. "Mom, they made a lesson about you in my business ethics class today. The professor didn't even know you were my mother. He just said, 'This woman changed the way our industry looks at power.'" Monica had stared at the message a long time. Not with pride, but with promise. Because she didn't want to be known for one story. She wanted to change millions of unseen ones. The door to her hotel may have been closed that night. But she opened something far greater. A reckoning. A mirror. A future where the next Monica Harris won't have to say, "This is my hotel." She'll simply be greeted with, "Welcome back, Miss Harris." And no one will blink. Monica Harris didn't raise her voice. She didn't record a video or file a lawsuit. She simply stood in the place she built and waited for the world to recognize her. And in doing so, she didn't just get a room. She gave an industry a wake-up call. Because power doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it walks in quietly, carrying nothing but truth, and changes everything. If this story moved you, subscribe to True Echo. Share this video with someone who's ever felt unseen. Leave a comment and tell us, when did you walk through a door that wasn't meant for you, and claim your space anyway? Let this story echo. Because the world needs more than justice. It needs recognition.